Hello and welcome back to the Creating Health and Wealth for Retirement podcast. With you today is Mark Delaney. He's going to help you with all your health problems.
And that's Rick Collins. He's going to help you with your financial problems to create wealth for your retirement. And he's got an interesting topic for us to talk about today, one I never thought of. So, Rick, why don't you tell us what we're going to talk about today?
Have you ever had a setback in your life? And what do you do when that happens? Do you just give up and uh, change direction, or do you figure out what's going on, how you can do things better? And by setbacks, I mean, anything from a health problem or a divorce or having to go have major surgery or losing your job or your finances go crazy in the stock market, you lose 30% overnight in the next pandemic, or you get involved in a car wreck and suddenly you can't work. What do you do? Do you give up or do you move forward in a different direction?
How about some others things like, let's say, personal setbacks that maybe I did something really dumb, or maybe the person who's listening right now made a mistake that still they're still paying for, or just so many times. I don't know about you, Rick, but I wake up in the morning with these phenomenal plans for how I'm going to do something today, and I go to bed wondering what happened. How did I not do that? Or the worst one of all is we say something stupid out loud that we wish we hadn't have said to somebody we may care about. So there are a lot of different ways people experience setbacks, and some of them are public, and some of them, maybe the worst setbacks, are the ones we know that we didn't do what we set out to do or supposed to do.
Yeah, I like the analogy of driving a car down the road. And for example, if you're going from, well, I'm in Texas, so from Houston to Dallas, it's 190, 200 miles, a 4 hour drive. In Texas, we measure everything by hours, not miles. It's a 4 hour drive, but suddenly there's a wreck on the interstate and we have to detour. I can still get where I'm going, but I've got to be able to pivot and be flexible in my plans to take the surface roads or take the back roads or the pig trails through the countryside to get around the obstacle I'm dealing with. And a lot of people find out the hard way that they have one plan, and if that plan doesn't work for them, whether it's for the day, the week, the month, the year, the decade, if that plan suddenly gets stymied by factors outside of my control or something I've done and made a bad decision, and suddenly that plan doesn't work anymore, they get stuck and they don't know what to do. And sometimes they just give up and say, oh, it's hopeless. Well, I'm just not ever going to be able to do that. And I don't want that for people who are listening to us, our audience. If you're driving down the road and suddenly there's a traffic jam, usually people have a GPS on their phone and the GPS will recalculate a route around it. I want people to know they can do that in their lives as well.
And I think one of the biggest setbacks that we don't talk about enough, and that I want to make sure we have include this conversation, is health setbacks. You're going through something with your back. I'm going through something from my cancer treatment symptoms, and those things prevent us from really either physically create pain or mentally, in my case, creates slowness or and so these are things that also can be seen as setbacks where the analogy you just made about the GPS and how do you get around those things, we have to be able to work and live through. So someone's had a setback, Rick, what's the first thing you suggest that they do?
If somebody has a financial setback, say the next pandemic hits, you lose 30% of your retirement in the stock market. The first thing to do is stop and take measure of where you are. And my wife does this. She doesn't like going to the doctor because she gets bad news. Well, going to the doctor getting bad news doesn't change the fact that you're already sick. Now you at least know what's going on. You can treat it. Same thing for finances and business and savings. If something's not going the way you want it to, stop, take a breath, evaluate your entire situation, not just the one specific thing that's not going right, but put together a list. These are my assets. These are my liabilities. This is my monthly income. This is my monthly expenditures. So you at least have a good foundation of knowledge from which you can make a decision about what you need to do. Now, if
And for
people
me,
go ahead.
it would seem like if you're having a setback, something's going in the wrong direction, you want to figure out how you can find out why so you can stop it from happening. So many times people they're like if the stock market's going in the wrong direction, if our health's going in the wrong direction, we can't keep doing the same things because we're just going to get more of the same. So we have to figure out why we're having this setback and try to stop whatever is causing it so we can go start going in the right direction that we want to go in.
Yeah, for example, I'll talk about my physical stuff. When I was 19 years old, I had a car wreck, and then 9 months later, I started losing weight. I was always hungry, always going to the bathroom, always thirsty. I lost 70 pounds in 3 months. There was something wrong, and I just ignored all the symptoms. And finally, after I came home for Thanksgiving, my grandmother said, "You're going to the doctor tomorrow. You look sick," because I weighed 170 pounds, and for me, that's really thin. And come to find out, I developed type 1 diabetes. My doctor said, "Yeah, your blood sugar's over 1,000. I don't know how you walked in here." I'm like, "Well, I kind of floated, but because I'm dizzy and see stars." But the reality was, I needed to know what was wrong so I could fix it. Now, we listen to our bodies, and our bodies will tell us sometimes, "Hey, something's not right." You may not know what it is. Like for my back problems, I had pain in my legs, but I had to go get an MRI so they could look inside my body to figure out what was wrong that was causing this referred pain. And after that, I could treat it, and minimize that impact it has on my life. Same thing goes with finances and your business. Until you take stock of everything and really be honest with yourself about what's going on, where you are versus where you want to be, you can't make any definite changes to do things differently because you don't know what's wrong. That's the first step, is admitting you got a problem. In recovery, the first step is, "Hey, I've got a problem." Same thing with finances and health issues and setbacks. "Hey, I've got a problem. What exactly is my problem?" And then you can come up with a solution or talk to somebody to help you get a solution.
I think, I know this is called the health and wealth, but again, we discussed in the last episodes, nothing will destroy your health or wealth like poor relationships. So sometimes what's wrong in our lives are people, and we need to do some evaluations of the people in our lives to see if they're the ones that's causing the problems, and maybe we need to change our associations on occasion, or at least have honest conversations that this isn't working for me. How can we make it work for both of us? And I think that's a very important thing to do. And the same thing is true with your fitness coach, your financial coach, your sometimes maybe your boss. These things might prevent setbacks moving forward into the future by having conversations with people about what's going on and what's going wrong.
Yeah, it's all about being real with yourself about your situation. And I'm glad you pointed that out. Um, Relationships can be a physical drain, an emotional drain. If something's not right, if there's expectations that aren't being met, or if it seems one-sided, then you get bitterness and resentment. And unfortunately, guys do stupid things when it happens, and then you wind up with guilt or shame or divorce or a breakup. So airing those problems in a healthy way. "Hey, I'm feeling this when this happens. Help me understand how we can do things better." Having those open conversations. I recommend everybody go through a 12-step program, whether they have an addiction or not, because it helps you understand your own motivations, your internal baggage that you've brought from past relationships, so you can better communicate in your current relationship. But go see a couples therapist, go see a counselor to talk through some issues with an objective third party, so you identify your blind spots. And because that's what therapists do, they help you understand your blind spots and ask you questions to make you think. And I've benefited greatly from talking to therapists and then going into the recovery ministry I work in, where I learned how to deep dive into somebody's issues and make them think, because that's what my sponsor did to me. It's just very helpful to their relationship to be able to be honest with yourself and then honest with each other.
I think the idea of open communications with whoever it is may save people more time, more health, more money than they may know moving forward. But sometimes we're reluctant to do that. I think the key component though of I have a setback is to identify the cause of the setback, and whether that's a communication with someone, whether that's studying, whether it's therapy, whether it's talking to one of us about where we are. I think the key component of you have a setback, if you don't get to the understanding of what's wrong, then you cannot fix the problem. And sometimes I think we're more afraid of the real problem. We don't want to address, quote, the elephant in the room. So we just keep dealing with the little tiny symptoms until they become as big as the elephant. And then we have to discuss the elephant in the room.
That's funny. It, and this applies to the relationships as well as the finance and the health. If there's an issue, and if I'm unhappy in a relationship, and I don't talk about it because I'm afraid to cause a fight, or I'm afraid that it's something I'm doing and I don't want to be wrong, so I'm not going to talk to my spouse about it because I'd rather be miserable than fix the problem.
And can I
Whether
just
the
say one
problem,
thing? And
yeah,
one thing, because I think this is important. The worst thing that you can do is be afraid to ask a question because you don't want to hear the answer. If you're in that situation, you should just stop and just understand you've got a real problem. If I'm afraid to ask you a question because I'm not going to like the answer, whether or not you're my partner in a podcast, my partner in a relationship, my partner in a business, then I've got a real problem. Sorry to cut you off, but I think that's an important point.
knowledge is key. That is the first step. Like again, first step in recovery program. Hey, I've got a problem. What is it? I don't know, but I've got a problem. Something's not right. And guys are really bad. We don't go to the doctor even though something's hurting or we don't feel right, but we'll put off going to the doctor for months or years even because we don't want to know what's wrong. We would rather ignore it and live with something that could be growing inside me that's going to kill me because I didn't take care of it sooner when it was this big and suddenly it's a tumor this big. That becomes a problem. We don't want to know what's wrong, so we just ignore it. We live with it. We try to minimize the impact it's having on our life. Same thing happens with finances. If I've got a goal to save for retirement and I'm not getting where I need to be, I'm either spending too much money or I'm not making enough money or I'm not getting enough return on my money. Until you know what's causing that, you can't do anything differently to change your outcome. You're just stuck where you are. And I guarantee you, a 40-year-old who doesn't have money saved for retirement in 20 years, a 60-year-old's not going to have money saved for retirement either. They're going to be bitter and resentful, and they're going to be mad at themselves for not making a change in their life. So being ignorant of my situation is not going to help me have a better outcome in the future. Same with my health problems. If I don't go to the doctor and get the MRI or have the labs drawn, yeah, it might be bad news, but the news is not going to change other than the fact that it enables me to do things differently to change that outcome.
So a long time ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, as many of you know, I'm a prostate cancer survivor. And many, many years ago, the only way to test for prostate problems was to stick a probe up your butt. And that is very humbling to most men. And there are a lot of men who made the decision, I'd rather have prostate cancer and deal with that than have that simple 30-second test done to them. Fortunately, men, in case you don't know, today prostate exams start with a blood test. So you stick a needle in your arm, you take a blood test, and they give you something called the PSA score. And that PSA score above 4 means you're a candidate to have prostate cancer. Much, much less invasive. But there were people who literally said, I'd rather have cancer than have that test done. And that is a perfect example of how we'd rather be ignorant of something that's coming that's going to kill us than take 30 seconds to have a test or have a conversation with a spouse or have a conversation with a business partner. I mean, so many people in business, one partner was embezzling money from the company, and the other partner knew something was wrong but was afraid to ask his partner, and by the time he did ask, all the money was gone.
It's too
Ladies and
late. It's
gentlemen,
too late to fix the problem if you've put it off for years. It's blossomed into something that can't be fixed. If my
correct.
health is going
And
down and I don't take action now, 10 years from now, it's going might be irreparable, or 5 years from now even. Same with
six
finances.
months,
My
6
bank
months.
account's not where I want it to be, I've got to do something different.
We talked about the prostate exam, PSA test. Takes one trip to a blood sampling, and you get a number. When that number is 8, the treatment is way different than when that number is 80 or 40 something. Because once it gets to 40 something and above that, that means it's starting to go through your body. Now that means more treatment, or it may go into an organ. And the same thing is true with money. If you're losing $10 a month for whatever reason, and it's growing, why wait till you get to 500 a month before you solve the problem? Relationships, you barely speak to one another. How about a conversation about why before one person moves out? Problems only get worse when ignored. That's the bottom line.
It's interesting. Problems get worse when they're ignored. Have you ever had a splinter in your hand or your foot or your finger?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
It's easy to pull that splinter out. It might be a little unpleasant to get a needle or tweezers to pull that splinter out. But if I've had a splinter in my foot that I ignored, and it went deeper and deeper into my foot. It migrated, and then became a cyst where I couldn't even walk on it, and I wound up having to have surgery on that. Well, the doctor called it surgery, billed my insurance for surgery, but he had to actually cut my foot open and pull the cyst out and drain the cyst, pull the splinter out. And it was much more painful to recover from because I ignored it because I didn't want the unpleasantness of digging around in my foot to get the splinter out when it was on the surface. So I just put it off and it grew and turned into something much more unpleasant and wound up having stitches in the bottom of my foot simply because I didn't want to do the work to fix the problem when it was a small problem and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
So this is not like a hypothetical story. This is a real
Oh,
thing
that's a
that you
real
actually
story.
get
That's
to.
just
It's a
stupidity on
real
my part.
story.
Of it'll be okay. I don't want to. It's going to hurt to dig it out, so I'm going to leave it alone. Well, that problems with finances, with relationships, with your health, they don't get better the longer you ignore them. They just get worse and harder to treat and more expensive, more unpleasant to treat later.
So we talked earlier before the podcast, and I talked. I'm going through a relationship challenge or struggle, and I've been kind of avoiding the conversation, and it's this podcast, Rick. You just helped me realize I need to have that conversation one way or another, because there is a, and it's a small problem. So why wait till it becomes a big problem? This is a great podcast, Rick. Thank you so much for this for
You're
doing it.
welcome. Dropping pearls of
Um,
wisdom wherever I go.
but I will say this to you though, you also have a relationship problem that you need to address before the holiday season comes up that we talked about also.
Yes, I have people in my life that I don't agree with
So I just
politically.
want to say before you, so I just want to say that agreement isn't the problem usually. The problem is how do we handle this topic that we disagree on?
Yeah,
I
it's
just think
interesting.
that's
We
an
don't agree on politics. I am completely opposite of my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and the rest of my wife's family. I have to figure out how to navigate being around family, and sometimes that's setting boundaries of, hey, I'm not going to talk about this. Or if this conversation comes up, I'm going to withdraw from that conversation. It's setting a boundary so I don't put myself in a position where I say something that's going to hurt some feelings or get some people angry, and that winds up hurting my wife. I don't care about my feelings as much as if I go off on my mother-in-law, my wife's going to get hurt, and I don't want to do that. Same reason with going after Christmas, they take a trip up to Dallas. I'd have no wish desire whatsoever to go hang out with my in-laws in another city, um, just because I know it's not going to be enjoyable for me. But I may wind up going because my wife wants to go because our granddaughter may be coming down from Arkansas. So it's making the decision of how do I navigate, whether it's having a conversation of, hey, I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to discuss this topic because we're going to say some things that hurt each other's feelings. Let's not do that. And that's one of those things where I've got to be a grown up and figure out what I want to do, whether it's avoiding the situation altogether, setting some firm boundaries, or having that conversation with them of, can't we all just get along and not talk politics because it's not a healthy thing for us to talk politics. So yeah, it's interesting to the sticky interpersonal things I've got to deal with that I'd just rather not. But if I ignore them, that's when the real blow up happens and we get disinvited from the family and my wife gets hurt. And, that's the last thing I want to do is hurt my wife. So it's really about my motivation, my responsibility to my wife, and being a grown up about my situation. to minimize the potential of a setback, or if a setback happens, not to make it worse by ignoring the problem.
So in the concept of what we're talking about, the idea of setbacks, one of the things that I think would be helpful to people is to measure, the concept of measuring. So whether it's a relationship, whether it's with our money, whether it's with our bodies, anything that can be measured and tracked can tell us if we're moving in the right direction or the wrong direction. One of the things I have all my clients do is weigh themselves daily. And if that weight is going up, every week, what they're doing isn't getting the results that they want. If it's going down, as in your case, when it goes down too much, it can also be a problem. So measuring money, how much money, cash flow, is your net worth rising? Is it falling? The idea of preventing setbacks, nothing will help you more than measuring what's going on in the important areas of your life. Do you have a way of tracking your money to know if it's going in the right direction? Is your relationship moving in the right direction? Your body, your weight, your energy. If you used to, and we're not talking about over years, if 3 months ago you could stay up till 11 o'clock at night with energy and fun, and now you can't make it past 9 o'clock, something's wrong. And if that happens in months as opposed to years, it's not just because you're older, it's because something's changed with your diet, with your body, with your lack of exercise, and it's telling you something. So measuring is one key component to prevent a setback.
Yeah, it's measuring, even for my health, for example, I get labs done every 3 to 6 months, and I've got a spreadsheet that I put all the results in, and I can look at graphs to look at my A1C, my TSH, my lipids, all the things. So the trends are more important than the individual measurement, and you can't have trends without the measurements. But if I look at my labs over the last 3 years, some things have gotten better, some things have gotten worse, but it helps me understand the direction I'm going and what I might need to do differently, or what I need to ask my doctor about, just so I can reverse a negative trend or improve a positive trend.
Yeah, without question, measuring tells you where you are. If you're a married couple and you used to have one, minor discussion a month, and now you're having three big fights a month, that means something's wrong. And you got to come through you can't ignore it. One of the things that I think that we all wished was that if we ignored something, it would just go away. And history has proven to us that's not true. America did it with Germany twice in the past. We did it with other. It just doesn't work. What you ignore doesn't go away.
Well, that is generally the case. I will tell you that in a relationship, if you ignore the problem, your spouse, one of you is going to go away, because it usually will end up in a divorce. But
Well, that's my point, though.
in most
That
other
is my
things, if
point.
you ignore something, it's not going to change. But yeah, your relationships will wind up divorce or breakup. But you're right. If I ignore the problem, it's not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. It's going to be a hindrance. It's going to affect other areas of my life. For example, I've had a sore foot before, and I didn't take care of the sore foot. I sprained my ankle. I kept walking on it. 2 weeks later, my knee hurt, and I still didn't go to the doctor. I'm now 2 weeks after that, my back's hurting because I've screwed up my whole body because I didn't take care of the one little problem. Now I've got four different problems. Same thing with finances. If I'm not save if I can't pay all my bills and I don't have enough money to make it to the end of the month, then I've either got a problem with my bills or my income, or the way I spend my money. Ignoring that only makes it worse, and you're digging a hole that's harder to get out of the longer you wait to start digging out.
Okay. So I'm wearing a shirt, and I know if you're listening to me, you can't see it, but it's a lion. And one of the interesting things about lions and most animals in nature, they don't have time for feelings. Every day in an animal's life, other than humans and our pets, is live or die, eat, mate, or die. And so they don't have time to treat symptoms or deal with feelings and emotions. And we look at people who live their life like that. If you're a problem, you got to go. There's a guy named Dan Kennedy. I'm pretty sure you've heard of him. He's a
Yep.
big time marketer. And Dan Kennedy once said, if I wake up twice thinking about you and I'm not sleeping with you, you got to go. One of the things about success, one of the things about success is you can literally determine who's in your life and who's not. And I think one of the ways you create success is determining
Freudian
who's
slip
in your
there.
yep, determining who's in your life and who's not in your life. If you've got a person that constantly brings you down, constantly makes you angry, constantly, and they don't serve a purpose that brings you any benefit, why have that person in your life? They're not helping you. They're not doing anything for you. You're probably helping them. I'm amazed at how many stories I hear people who say, I'm helping this person do that, and they complain all the way. Well, stop helping them. Let them figure out how to do it on their own.
If you continue helping somebody and they're not making progress, you're continually helping them deal with a problem, you're not helping them, you're enabling them. You're enabling them to continue bad behaviors because you're always there helping them. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is to stop helping somebody who is not valuing the help you're given. They're not taking action to avoid the situation that requires help to begin with. So stop enabling bad behavior. And sometimes that means a strong conversation. Sometimes that means cutting that person out of your life. Like you said, if somebody's always dragging me down and I don't get any good positive things from that relationship, that is a toxic relationship that I don't need in my life because I have a limited amount of energy and focus. And if I'm getting some of that sucked away by this toxic relationship, the important things in my life are suffering.
So we're coming to the end of another episode. And I think the key component is don't ignore symptoms, measure, be aware of where you are and what you're doing. And most importantly, when you identify something that is a problem, don't ignore it. You got to address it one way or another. You may not be the most popular person in the room, but you may be the person in the most peace when you deal with your problems and solve them and move on.
We only have one life to live. We have limited time on this planet. And sometimes making choices, making decisions of how do I go forward now? What's next? What do I need to say to this person so we can move forward? It takes being a grown up to be a grown up and to actually enjoy the time you've got left. You may have to cut some things out of your life. You may have to do some things differently. You may have to have unpleasant conversations, but again, the first step is, hey, is acknowledging I've got a problem. This isn't working for me. I've got to do something different. And then being equipped with that knowledge of this isn't what I want. What do I do next? Instead of just hoping it goes away by ignoring it or pretending it doesn't matter.
Then the last thing I think that I want to get in here for this topic is there's a difference between solving a problem and treating the symptoms of a problem. And I'm going to just say this, most prescription drugs are designed not to solve the problem of high blood pressure or high cholesterol or even diabetes. They're designed to actually mask the symptoms of those things or treat what's making the number high, but it's not making you healthy. In essence, a pharmaceutical company does not create a drug, so you take a pill for a week and you cure yourself, except for antibacterial and stuff like that. They make drugs so that you take this pill for the rest of your life until it stops working. And most of us have that kind of an approach towards our problems. Oh, I'm going to not say this to this person because it's just going to start this thing, but you're not happy, they're not happy. Solve the problem. Don't treat the symptoms. That's what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, and to solve the problem, you got to figure out first what the problem is, and then you really have to take action to make a difference, not just pacify yourself and others so there's no bumps on the road. Sometimes it takes making a detour in your plans, and that detour may be cutting somebody out or stopping and having a good, honest conversation with yourself and with them. And then you go from there to continue down the path you wanted to begin with from the beginning, or sometimes you may have to deviate your path to get to the destination you want, or sometimes your destination changes. But
The true bottom line is,
just ignoring the problems, the just is not a healthy solution long term for any problem.
any last words for our audience today, Rick?
I would encourage everybody listening to take stock of where you are, what is working in your life, what's not working in your life, If you're unhappy with a certain area of your life, whether it's health, finances, religion, your relationships, quit ignoring the problem because it only will get worse. Talk to somebody who can actually help you with your health or your finances or your relationship or your spiritual growth. Whatever that problem is, talk with somebody who can help you and then take action.
Measure and act. That's the simplest thing that way we can put it, right? Measure where you are and act on something to get better results. Rick, if someone wants to talk to you, any suggestions?
Go to my website, getmydebtfreedate.com, getmydebtfreedate.com, and you can schedule a discovery call with me. We can talk about finances and money and life goals and all kinds of good things.
And rather than say my link, I put it in the comments below. So you should be able to see both of our addresses there. But I'm school.com/THM Club. And I do a course called 88 Seconds a Day. And in 80 seconds a day, I will help you solve problems and move forward in life. Rick, say goodbye. And we'll be back next week. Same bat
Everybody have a
time,
great day. See you soon.
same bat channel.